Hey my friends, Yarrow Willard, Herbal Jedi signing in, and today I've got a magical herb to share with you. One that has been used throughout history with lots of folklore, lots of medicinal uses, and has all kinds of rich history of being used to protect us from evil spirits. But it's also a very powerful antifungal, great for the digestive system, helping burning fats and all kinds of other things. So join me in inviting mugwort, or invoking mugwort, into our space today. So today we're talking about mugwort, and this is one of the most delicate and dainty plants I know. It's non-intrusive, it's very gentle, and so before we get into the medicinal use of it, let's make sure we got the right plant and kind of go through a little bit of the botany of this plant. So first off, this is an Artemisia family. That's with all the sages and the wormwood and many of these other kind of antifungal herbs. All of them have often this silvery aspect to them. So this one has got a green leaf that looks almost like one of those kind of flames you'd see on a car. It's got this kind of flame-ish quality to it, but it's silver on the backside and very soft and fuzzy. So it's just a easy to recognize plant, different from the Artemisias where they have a silver top and a silver bottom. They also have mildly hallucinogenic properties. This is in the Asteraceae or daisy family, which is that Compositae family that has a lot of the best medicinal plants we know of. So it's one that we've seen throughout history being used and actually cultivated in a place like this. It likes to grow in these kind of disturbed soils. Where we are right now, it's considered an invasive weed actually, but it was planted here because we're here in Cumberland in the old Japanese town site, and the Japanese have a lot of history of using this plant. So they actually planted it all through here, and now it's wild all in this area. So it's a great area for me to come and connect in with mugwort because it's just abundant, and you'll see this all through the world. When you go to Asia, when you go to Europe, there's lots of mugwort growing beside houses, growing along roadways, growing along ditches. Part of the reason was it was actually one of the first cultivated plants. There's a lot of history around its magical use in being able to protect us and ward off evil spirits all through every culture. So this plant has a lot of historical uses everywhere that it grew. You know, in China, probably one of the most famous ways in which mugwort was used was moxibustion. And this is where they would make a moxie stick out of the mugwort, and they'd burn it over top of acupuncture points to relieve stagnation. This is a more potent way. Many of the TCM doctors know about mugwort, mostly for its use as moxibustion. In Japan, which is where we're in right now, is this Japanese garden, this old Japanese garden. They would use it in a lot of their culinary dishes. Actually, you'll see that all through Asia, through Korea, through China, and through Japan as a culinary herb. It has a slightly bitter flavor, so it's been used in soups and stews, but especially something called mochi balls, which are like a rice patty balls. They're commonly made with mugwort, and you'll see this in many different Japanese kind of dessert cuisine and this type of thing. They call it yomagi in Japan, and it is very highly used through many of their dishes. When we get into Europe and we look at old kind of druidic traditions, we see this is a very much magical herb all through Europe, many different areas, even all the way down in Morocco. This plant was used for its protective qualities. People would wear it to help protect them while they traveled so they didn't get infected or evil beasts come and get them. People would hang it in their houses to protect their homes in the winter months. This plant, also because it's picked in around the midsummer, has all kinds of rituals throughout Europe of being used for that midsummer fire, where one of the rituals is we take mugwort and we make it into some kind of stick like this, and then put it around as a crown and wear the crown and dance around the fire with the crown, setting intention to ward off evil spirits, to bring in abundance for the year to come. And at the end of the night, throw the crown into the fire. This is one of the main kind of rituals with this, but also it's been smoked and burned for a long time. So what I've made here is a couple of these sticks that I'm going to use as sort of smudge sticks. Again, this is in that sage family, so it's like the sage bundle, but this one has a little more of that bringing space between the veils type quality. So it's bringing us to that vivid state, to that kind of altered perception, where our sensory gating channels are a little more open. And that's the idea with mugwort, is it protects us at a spiritual level. And so it's one of those plants that we can dry. In this case, I'm going to dry these, hang them, and let them dry. Once they're dried, I might cut them into sections and use them as smudge sticks. We'll burn this as an incense and as a way to kind of awaken vividness within us. So I've taken some mugwort of even length, about 6 to 7 sticks of it, and I'm just going to try and pull it down as I make these bundles. Usually, now my traditional awareness is trying to make this going clockwise as I come down, and then counterclockwise as I go the other way. So I've just wrapped it around like so, and I'm just going to tie these two off. And that is a simple mugwort smudge bundle. I can then hang these to dry like so, and we'll have nice smudge bundles. Being used for a lot of magic and folklore, there's all kinds of myth around this. One of the things that this plant is said to do is to release and awaken our wilder, untamed selves, to release that piece of us that's being trapped and held back. This is a way in which burning it as an incense or a smudge, or actually smoking it and inhaling the smoke, can be used. It's also great as a tea, it's great as a tincture, and I've mentioned already that it's great as a smoke. So this is one of those plants that has many universal ways of being used. I particularly like to make a cold infusion with this, and I especially like to add it to fermenting beverages. So mugwort, as the name suggests, mugwort. So if you know much about plants, you'll know that wort is really good for. So we have, many of these plants that are worts, and so mugwort is one of those. Motherwort is another one. Anyway, St. John's wort. But mugwort, as the name may suggest, was one that was used to flavor the mug. So before hops was ever added into beverages, mugwort was the herb of choice for flavoring fermented beers. This was beer wort, essentially, used to make the wort of beers. And it has a really nice flavor. It's got a bit of a bitter compounds to it, which would replace the hops, but it's also got a little bit of astringency to it, and it's just a nice, gentle plant that has a great flavor when we add it to any kind of beer. It was commonly used with yarrow and other herbs like that, the Labrador tea or plants like that, to make a nice, flavorful fermented beverage. So this plant has a lot of benefits for healing inflammation, but specifically of the digestive system. That's one of its great places. So stomach ulcers, IBS, irritable bowel, this kind of stuff. Mugwort as a beverage, drinking as a tea or taken as a tincture, can have a great effect on calming down inflammation in those areas. So it's one of those great herbs for that. But also because it's antifungal, it helps kill things like candida in the gut and as well as on the skin. So we might use it for ringworm, or we might use it for athlete's foot or jock itch or any of these kind of fungal infections externally or internally if there's a lot of fungus in the body. Now remember, we talked about its spiritual capacity to ward off evil spirits. Now in the old world, this is what we thought many of these kind of digestive dysentery and inflammation and this stuff was evil spirits. Well, it's actually the antifungal properties in here, and the high thujone and camphor and other compounds like that that are in mugwort that really are its antifungal protective quality. Now, all the Artemisias have some aspect of this, but it's one that could be used for things like parasites lightly and fungal infections. So we're gonna use this as a medicine for that. I have added it into one of my favorite teas, a green tea, which is more of a green herbs of the West Coast, electrolyte and digestive balancing tea. Very delicious. We carry that at Harmonic Arts. It's one of my favorites. Just love the way that tea tastes with cedar tips and mugwort and nettle and lemon balm and bull kelp. Just, anyway. But beyond its effects on the digestive system, this also helps support the body in actually breaking down and assimilating fats. So that's a big aspect of mugwort's capacity, is to help the body break down and assimilate fats better. So for those of us who have a hard time digesting fats, this might be one of the herbs to add into our food. And that's part of the reason why we see it in so many cultures in their culinary cuisine, because mugwort is a great one for helping our digestion. Mugwort is synonymous with the moon. Moonwort could be another name for it. And this is also how it works for the feminine cycle. Many women have found great benefits from taking mugwort when there's a painful menstruation, especially around cold cramping. It's slightly stimulating, bitter, but also invigorating and warming the area. So it can actually be a bit of a uterine tonic to support those with kind of a scanty, blotchy, cramping type menstruation issues. So I just love this plant for so many uses, but probably one of my favorite uses of mugwort is its nervous system support, its vivid dreaming, lucid dreaming aspects, its slightly hallucinogenic protector and veil creator. Really, this has been used therapeutically for a lot of neuromuscular issues like convulsions, hysteria, epilepsy. It has a lot of benefit for these kind of things, but for those of us who have a bit of anxiety, to just calm us down, bring us back into our center, I find mugwort is a great smoke or a tea for that contemplative state, to calm down the nervous system. Now, in a world where we are constantly being bombarded by so much stimulation, I find our nervous systems are a little overwired, they're over-tweaked, they're over-dialed. And mugwort's one of these herbs that can be burned as a smudge in our workspace or can be used as a tea to just kind of calm us back down. And it's said to bring us to our wilder self, but really to bring us to a more full aspect of ourselves so that we can have our wildest dreams become a reality. Now, I believe that all of us are capable of powerful things, and herbs like mugwort can help transform our vision so we see some of that power behind the veils of our own reality. So I really appreciate that aspect of this plant. It's kind of lucid dreaming aspects and its vividness. So I've smoked this plant plenty of times. I add it to a herbal smoke mix. We do a spirit smoke that's kind of like an analog for your marijuana, but not so much, doesn't get you high, just really creates that spiritual context with mugwort and Labrador tea and lotus and all these other kind of herbs, some Dabiana. But this herb on its own can be used the same way. It can be picked, dried, and smoked or smudged to give this aspect. Now, another aspect of it that people have used for this type of thing is making dream pillows. So it's one of my favorite things to do too. I've done this a few times. Take a few sprigs of mugwort, dry them out, put them underneath your pillow, or you can buy a mugwort essential oil and put a couple of drops on your pillow or on a cloth around your bed. This is a great way to use mugwort through its essential oil or through its leaves as a tea, as an essence, as any of these kind of aspects. So if you want to get a little bit of lucid dreaming in, you want to kind of come to that state, this is the right herb to start working with. It's one you should get to know and one I really invite you to explore further. Now, of course, this video can't cover everything there is to know about mugwort, but I hope it gives you a couple of little glimpses into some ways in which this herb can be used. And like many of these other people plants, it's a weed that's abundant and easy to find. Once you tap into where it grows, you can pick it, you can pick the roots and snap off the big stems. As long as there's little runners that are growing, it'll regrow anywhere. So it's easy to transplant and root divide. It's an easy one to get growing in your garden. Thanks for joining me and learning a bit about mugwort. I hope you get out, enjoy this plant, connect with it, and learn a little more intimately and directly from this plant itself, because it's a powerful one, and yet it's non-intrusive, it's abundant and easy to find. Ciao for now. May the forest be with you, my friends, and may mugwort be on your side.